We have a panel here, a couple of people I'd like to introduce. Two of the presenters we had before are here, and we have Graham Boardman, who is from Greenvest and is representing David Murky. If you have questions for David, please direct them to Graham. And we have Jason Mills here from Soltesh, civil engineers for, I gather, the project which may have prompted this session altogether. In some ways. So what I'd like to do is to take questions from you, and I'll also be taking questions from our online participants, but you who have come to this event, I'd like to give you priority, and then we'll end with some comments by the mayor. So are there any questions from any of you for any of these folks? Sir.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dan Smith from Chevrolet with Friends of Lower Beaver Dam Creek and the Chevrolet Green Infrastructure Committee, but I'm a member of Sierra Club.
The question would be like on the stream restoration. So with all the examples, I would agree that the ones you showed were really seem to be engineering projects. And I'm wondering if you've looked at some that have succeeded or met objectives that were more ecological. And I'm especially in DC, now I haven't looked at them recently, but when they're installing several in DC, including the National Arboretum, how are those doing? And then also, why can't we, I guess, are you saying that we can solve the problem with just upstream watershed, retrofits, and we cannot, and so therefore you don't need to do this? You still have these huge incised problems. Isn't there a holistic approach, which actually is kind of what we were hearing from Murky as an approach?
Yeah, good questions. There are a lot of stream restorations that I have not seen. All the ones I have seen have been, I would argue, unmitigated disasters. I mean, all the examples I showed you, they go in and they clear cut and they re-engineer and they sculpt and they scrape down to bare soil. One could argue there's a whole degree of how you do a stream restoration. You could go in and you could plant a single tree. That's one one end. The other end is you bring in a bulldozer and you clear cut everything. Or maybe put another way, one restoration, you only cut down one tree, and the other extreme is you cut down all the trees. I would argue, and I know the industry is going to push back, but I would argue that if you control the stormwater outside of the stream valley, they call it upland. If you control all the stormwater upland, you've removed basically the source of the problem, which is this stormwater fire hosing into the stream. So now you're left with, now you're left with an erosion gully. What do you do about that? So the question you have to ask yourself is, are you talking about aesthetics or are you talking about ecology? If you say it looks terrible, that's a value judgment. It doesn't, and I would argue it doesn't really matter what if you think it looks ugly, or if I think it looks ugly, or I think it looks great, that's not the point, right? It should be the ecology. So that's number one. Number two, I would say that it's common sense that if you have an unstable gully, an unstable stream bank, the way gravity works is that's eventually going to stabilize. It's going to slowly slough off. It's going to slowly reach equilibrium. You can go in, you can plant trees and shrubs and forbs to jumpstart the stabilization. But if you remove the fire hosing from the upland impervious surfaces, you've removed the cause. I mean, there are a lot of arguments, that I heard against that. I would, it's a kid's gonna go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, how about to the
yeah.
I might add just Okay, I might add just a little bit to that. His statement is correct. If we are able to reduce the amount of flow that is running off, the streams will correct and they will stabilize. The challenge is, if you are in a developed area, how are you going to, as we started out, right? There's no space, right? You don't have unlimited funds. You saw a rain tax go in that was pennies on the dollar, and people revolted, right? And didn't want to pay. So the challenge is, and why stream restoration needs to continue to occur, and the methodologies are adjusting, so you're not seeing as much clearing. You're seeing newer, better methods come in, is how do you make this adjustment where you can't turn off the fire hose? You can maybe turn it down. You can do some of the stuff that everybody is seeing, where we put in bioswales and we do those things to get it better. At the same time, if you live along Wells Run and the stream is migrating into your backyard, are you willing to give up your house to not have a stream restoration project go in and let the stream migrate where it goes? It's a tough question that is so entangled that you can't just look at one thing. You have to look globally and say, okay, we need to look, we've largely attacked new development and it's in better shape. Stuff that goes in now, as we talked about earlier, is mimicking the runoff that's there. It's in better shape. It's not perfect by any means. The challenge is, if you live in a community that was built in the 1950s and your storm drain system is not adequate, there is no stormwater management and you're flowing into a stream, and that stream is now carrying a fire hose. It's carrying more water than it was ever meant to be. What are the best methods to try and fix that so that it doesn't continue to erode? And it's a variety of things. It's stream restoration. It's upstream methods. It's everybody in the community being aware of what's going on and what they can do to help limit the water that rolls off the site. I think the problem that, and Greenvest has been on the forefront of this, the problem that occurred is when, I think there are a lot of engineered streams that happened and occurred starting about 10 years ago, that you started seeing those designs come in. Now they're using other methods and better methods to start to try to limit the amount of clearing and limit those things. But you have to also look at, the first slide that this all started from is what's happening to the Chesapeake Bay. What's happening to that sediment that's running off those big cliffs that we saw in those pictures? If you're downstream, what is the appropriate sacrifice for the upstream measure to take to fix the downstream problem? And that's what everybody is wrestling with right now. As a civil engineer, for me, my job is to take the laws and practices that are in place and try to make the best of it, and try to, use products like a paved drain where it's applicable, use a product like a stormwater management pond where it's applicable, look at floods and how that works, and try to mash it all together and still deliver a product that is constructible, feasible, and cost effective. And I think that one of the things that is great about this conference is to talk about how you take that methodology and look at it from the purpose of how the laws are being currently applied and used to produce the best stormwater management downstream. And that's really where the challenge of your question is what's the best?
Mr. Bauer, you have a response.
Yeah, so I respectfully, I disagree with pretty much everything you said there. Most of these stream restorations are not taking place to protect people's backyard. Yes, there are cases like that. That then is not, in my opinion, That's not a stream restoration. That's an infrastructure protection project. That's like protecting a road that's caving in, or a sidewalk, or a bridge above. If someone's yard is caving in, that's, you armor plate that section of the stream, very short a distance, not a mile-long project. Number two, the project that I showed you, the video, that was just finished last year. They're clear cutting as much today as they were 10 years ago. That's just a total, with all due respect, that's a total greenwashing statement from industry people. I hear it every single time I give this. We're improving the process. We don't do that anymore. Yeah, you do. The other issue, no room upland. Yeah, there's plenty of room upland. I hear that every single time I present this. Just arm wavy, there are too many houses. We don't have enough places to do, rain gardens and biospheres. Yeah, you do. You go out any place around, they're all over the place. I've never seen a study done to really factually present that argument. And one final point, the cost. As I said in my presentation, the state of MDE, Maryland Department of the Environment, has documented there are 18 on a statewide basis, averaging, there are 18 upland stormwater practices that are cheaper than doing stream restorations. So to say that stream restorations, are the most cost-effective, or even one of the most cost-effective stormwater control practices, just isn't borne out by the facts.
On a quick response section through a couple things. An average design period for a project and permitting through MDE does not, what you're seeing now was designed considerably period of time ago. Okay, so you say it was just done, but you're implying that if I get funding for a project, that turns around in a month. It takes a considerable period of time to start a conceivability of a project, develop a concept, get continued funding, move through it, and go from there all the way through. So I want to just address that the projects that I'm designing today will be built a considerable period in the future, number one. Number two, I think that every single project of stream restoration that I have walked with MDE has born out of a public infrastructure challenge. And what I mean by that is there is an erosion of proportion that has led to the need to happen. I will tell you that there are some projects that haven't, because projects went forward and that criteria had not really been brought into play like it is today with MDE, where you really need to justify and weigh down why this stream restoration project, why this location. And I've been out there with a reviewer, we've been looking at something, we said, well, your instance of saying, let's just armor this corner. I know that he can tell you right now, when that technology was used 15 years ago, is why you have that stream turn, and now it can't go there, so now it goes there. And you move that project down and you have, put a Band-Aid on it. You put a 5-second Band-Aid on it and went from there. And that's a challenge. And so we continue to work to reconnect the floodplain and bring in material to bring it back up to where it was when it was first done, before it was cut, to reconnect that. Look at this picture you have right here, and look at how it's cut through and how it's no longer connecting back to the floodplain the way it was done originally. Go ahead.
This also, too, just to point out, this isn't a pre and post restoration.
Right.
Can you guys move the chat over a little bit? So the pictures that we were seeing here were originally in this Power's presentation were from the days following construction. This is a project that's 1 year following construction, and you can see where it's a much more natural type condition. So this is the final condition, and this is the existing.
No, what's the name of this project?
This is the Elks project in Anne Arundel County.
Bacon Ridge.
Bacon Ridge Branch, correct. I think this beech tree here is the same tree. So this is a different type of approach than going in and doing the realignment that that the pictures are that we saw. And that's where, yeah, there are different stream restoration approaches, and they have different results, and they have different impacts. And I think as an industry, we are really trying to find those approaches that have the greatest benefit with the smallest impact to the environment. And I applaud Mr. Bowers for bringing the attention to all of the critters that we can do better with protecting and preventing the trees. But, unfortunately, the cause of the poor stormwater management that we have and we're kind of stuck with is this symptom of the degraded streams. And it's just it's very difficult to ignore the symptom and address the cause because of all the issues we saw with, we can treat the 2-year storm event, but it's the 10-year storm event and the 20-year storm event and even the 100-year storm event that is causing problems that we just can't address with the stormwater management that's upstream. So.
And
I saw a question over here. Someone have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is sort of related to this idea of, okay, what kind of things need to happen to these streams to make them better than they were, okay? So my question has to do with the goals of these things, okay? So Mr. Bauer was talking about the need for ecological restoration, but a lot, like he said, the goal is usually things like decreasing property damage downstream, right? I mean, I know some of there's a stream restoration near my house where the goal was to decrease flooding in Upper Marlboro, which is, 5-10 miles downstream. Okay, so they're trying to slow down the water and get it to soak up before it gets downstream, moving fast enough that it's washing away the bridges and the houses, right? So, we're trying to also protect the people while we're trying to protect the turtles, okay? And I just want to give the folks who are trying to do that a sort of excuse here to make your case about why we need to do both.
Yeah, the goal of the stream restoration projects, I don't know, maybe 90% of the stream restoration projects in Maryland is to address the sediment issue in Chesapeake Bay. There's a huge issue with sediment and nitrogen and phosphorus going to the sediment to Chesapeake Bay. And the TMDL, the Bay diet, is addressing reducing those pollutants in Chesapeake Bay. And what we found is that stream restoration is a very effective way to do so. It also addresses these issues with infrastructure that are present in most of the valleys we have, with safety, with ecological health. But the real goal of most of these projects is to reduce sediment into the Chesapeake Bay. And we show a lot of effectiveness doing that. I think there are better ways that we can do it, and there are ways that we can reduce the sediment, but also do more biological uplift. But really the goals and the achievement of those projects is based primarily on reducing sediment downstream.
I would argue what's happening, though, is in doing that, we're sacrificing our local natural areas on the altar of saving the bay. So you saw the pictures that I showed. We're clear cutting our stream valleys, and we're saying, great, we're reducing the sediment that gets into the bay. And then up here in PG County and Montgomery County and the rest of Maryland, you're looking at a clear cut stream valley. So what's the point? The other, I would like to go back to the previous, we don't have to go back to the slide, but my comment is, I've been to that Bacon Ridge project, and I was given a tour by, I think it was Dave Berg? And he said that it was either 600 or 800 trees were cut to do that project. So, that kind of made my jaw hit the floor. The other thing I wanted to make a point about is, reconnecting the floodplain. And I've heard this over and over. Everyone, I mean, you're not the only one. Every industry person, a lot of government people, they talk about have to reconnect to the floodplain. Not every stream in Maryland had a floodplain. You can't just say you're going to reconnect the floodplain. You've got to look at go into the stream valley. You've got to do soil tests. You got to look at what's living there. And even if you, so that's number one. Number two is, even if you can prove that there used to be a floodplain and now it's clogged by legacy sediment from the backing up from the mills, my point would be, if you have an existing forest there that's been there for 50, 60, 70, X number of years, what's the point of clear cutting it to reconnect to the floodplain? I mean, why would you do that? You've lost that carbon sequestration, the habitat for the next 100 years.
Go ahead.
Excuse me just a second, Ralph, is this session being recorded right now?
Yes, it is.
You guys have to use the microphones, otherwise people will not be able to, who want to see this later, are not going to be able to hear what you're saying, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Hurt.
Yeah, would it be possible to pull that picture back up, the before and after?
How do we do that?
Did David have that? I think David may have had that picture up.
Okay, yeah, my name is Michael Ellis, and I have a degree here from the University of Maryland, Environmental Science and Technology. And I'm in facilities management. I manage campus landscapes. So, this photo on the right side is really kind of what the industry is moving towards. We had a Campus Creek stream restoration project, and it's just like this photo on the right, although we lost significant amounts of trees, and it's just invasive species taking over the stream bank now. But primarily, I'm really focused on this idea of, if this is being deployed in thousands and thousands of streams now, we're talking about dam after dam after dam, all these step pools, and the data from the geology department here at the University of Maryland is showing that, yes, we're reducing sediments and nitrogen getting into the Chesapeake Bay, but each one of these pools is extremely cloudy water. We're bringing the dissolved oxygen to 0% in many cases in each one of these pools. The water running through the streams is no longer clear. We're not supporting fish. And so, the paint branch here is what we were trying to improve with our Campus Creek stream restoration. But, we have brown trout, and we have sensitive species. We have endangered freshwater invertebrates, endangered freshwater eels in the paint branch and little paint branch watersheds, and they can no longer live in these streams because of what we've done to them, putting these dams in and bringing the dissolved oxygen to zero. So I'm just wondering, if this is the model we're going to deploy, how is it acceptable to kill the ecology of these streams, and the microinvertebrates in there are now matching what we would find in degraded stream ecology with, matching something like a sewage, ditch?
It's a good question, and I think what it really highlights is that each project is, we call them snowflakes. Each project is different, and it has a different set of boundary conditions, from ecological perspectives to, this project was in a preserved forest. So, we have different goals for each project, and we can do different things with each project. So in this system, this was never a cold water system. There were not brown trout here. But in another system where there are brown trout, we have different types of techniques where we can focus on reducing water temperature and meeting those goals. So really, as we're developing all of these different tools in stream restoration, which is only a 30-year-old, 20 to 30-year-old really technique, we're making improvements and trying to work out how we can use the best approach for each different site, and still address the significant problems that we see here, where there's really not very much habitat here on the left side as well, and it's actively eroding, it's down cutting. This tree here is I don't know, what does it have, 3 more years before it is undercut and falling into the bank. So we kind of have to go in and triage those issues, and we can't just let these things erode, or else we're going to have these issues, and we're going to have all the sediment in the bay, and we're going to lose the trees, we're going to lose those systems anyhow. So
Yeah, if I can add to that, the concern I have with is that we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater in a way, and that we're lumping too many different things under the term of restoration. I mean, we've touched on the idea that there are utility protection projects, and that there are flood reduction projects, and that there are restoration projects that are habitat reduction projects. We are learning that not one technique fits all situations, and we need to be more specific in both of our language that we use to describe these things, and we need to be more site specific in our approaches. To use the example from the Campus Creek project, at this particular site at Bacon Ridge, we had the exact opposite effect, where the floodplain was dominated entirely by a microstygium, an invasive species. There was no natural regeneration or any other diversity, and there's no in-stream habitat in that channel. And as soon as within a month of completing construction, we had yellow perch laying eggs on all of that intricate habitat that was created at the log structures there. And we also increased the groundwater elevation throughout the entire floodplain and re-wetted the historic wetlands that had been dried out because the water table had dropped because of the stream incision. Brought that water table back up, and now that entire forest floor is awash with different wetland and upland native species. And yes, trees were removed, but we've done studies out there with to assess the presence of forest interior dwelling species, and they still use the site. We now have beaver in there, we have otter, we have a variety of different wading bird species that were not present before. And those sorts of things don't get picked up just in an IBI investigation. You have to look at the whole system. It would be great if we could do stormwater management and through the entire upper watershed. And we should do as much of it as we possibly can. But to say that, that's the only thing that we're going to do and that's good enough, and this stream that we've jacked up for the last 400 years, we're just going to walk away from it, that's irresponsible on our part.
Thank you.
I haven't seen anyone address my question, which is these step pools are creating a 0% dissolved oxygen. How is that acceptable?
I don't know where that data is coming from.
From the geology department at the University of Maryland on this site?
There's also a difference in the types of systems. One is that the Campus Creek system is a very urbanized area where you're getting hot water coming off of impervious surfaces that is then pooled in these areas that are, once the canopy is removed, then open to sunlight and can, warm up, and then the oxygen is lowered. You're right, that's not acceptable. And now we've learned that we shouldn't do things that way, that there's got to be a better way. We got to use infiltration and whatnot to try to get that water into the groundwater where it can come into the stream subsurface at a much colder temperature and retain those oxygen levels. In the system like this, we don't have those decreased oxygen levels. We do have fish habitat in there. We do, those woody structures are loaded with macroinvertebrates, partially because we were able to retain much of the canopy around the stream, partially because we were able to bring that groundwater level up throughout the entire system to maintain cold water input into the stream all year round. So yes, in Campus Creek, it didn't work. It under that metric, it failed. Under the metric of, maintaining or decreasing the sediment load, it was probably a success. What were the goals and objectives of the different projects? If the goal and objective was solely to reduce sediment, did we do that? Sure. Should the designers of that site also look at the temperature and the dissolved oxygen and the biota? Absolutely. But that's a lesson that we are just learning, and that we are just beginning to get enough of the data to look at and say, hey, we've been doing stream restoration for like 20, 30 years. Now we have enough data after about 10 years of some of these sites that we can start to look at and be like, oh, this is working, this is not working. We need to do better in these particular areas, but we still need to fix some of these sites and address them. None of them are pristine. None of them have been untouched by man. They're all have been screwed up for hundreds and hundreds of years. And like I said, we just can't walk away from them.
If that's fairly.
Thank you.
If I may.
Hi
So I'm going to shift the conversation, if I might,
Yes.
over to Dr. Aaron Fisher. The background here is that I'm a resident of University Park. I live within shouting distance of David Brosh and about a block up from Wells Run. The way to generalize this is that, so this is one of those, 1920 probably to 1960 communities. We're maybe an upland environment. We're just downstream from the 9 Pounds project that I'm sure you guys are familiar with. So, and it's a very hilly, developed neighborhood, single family houses, and so on. We're very interested in your, what would you call it? Your system. We're very interested in your system. We have a number of cases where it would seem like it would be applicable. And I'm curious as whether you have some, sort of generalizable, proportional things that you could speak to. In other words, you have an installation which is at an intersection, and the intersection is located somewhere where the adjacent streets are relatively flat. How much impermeable surface, how much water coming off a standard street, 32 feet wide, over the length of maybe a block, if you do that treatment in the intersection, are you going to be able to treat that water in that location? 1 to 10 in terms of area, 1 to 20 in terms of area, that kind of thing. We have conditions where the streets are sloped and crowned, so that the water's all in the gutter. Could you use your system, basically the width of a sidewalk, which is located where the gutter is now, and would that pick up most of the water that's coming down that street for several blocks? That kind of thing. That would be helpful for us to know.
So let me break your question down into 2 parts. You have the volume question and the velocity question. So the volume is generated by the area of the runoff. So generally, without getting too far down into MDE's rules, because MDE has rules that don't necessarily reflect it, if you were just handing me a drawing, I would try to take 10 to 20% of the area and turn that into a permeable paved drainage system. Now, which 10 to 20% of that we do, we work to see, obviously, if the water is being routed to the gutter pan, we're not going to try to recrown the street. We're going to use the gutter pan and do it that way. And we've certainly done installations that way. On the velocity question, this is one of the beauties of concrete. We're not claiming anything special. Concrete is a pretty high coefficient of friction. So unless you're getting a lot of water and it's able to flow, the coefficient of friction is pretty high. So we have the obligatory take a fire truck, drain a fire truck onto the permeable pavement. The water never runs more than 2 or 3 blocks before it falls in, most of it falling within about a foot of where it hits the surface. The coefficient of friction of concrete is just pretty high. On that way. And that's generally the 2 ways. So certainly we could address that. I mean, we look at it to take advantage of the natural grades and things like that. If you wanted an example, and this is the last thing I would say, look at Sligo Creek Hills in Tacoma Park, no, Sligo Park Hills, sorry, in Tacoma Park. We did their neighborhood 10 years ago. We took over a number of their parking stalls and things like that. And there are certainly some installs that I would not, we've learned that may not be the best way to do things. I mean, certainly Stormwater's come a long way, not only in the last 30 years, but in the last 10 years, that we would do differently. But certainly that's a great example of a neighborhood that's able to keep a lot of the stormwater. They were able to address a lot of the velocity issues that they were having. I don't think we built it quite big enough to address all the volume issues that they were having in that neighborhood. But in terms of runoff down ultimately into the creek itself, pretty significantly reduced. It's particularly the erosive flow. I mean, that does not help. The relationship between the power of water and the volume and the velocity is not linear. It is, I think somebody gave me, it's like to like the 7th power. And so water very quickly goes from barely able to carry a grain of sand to there goes that guy's car. And that's really the challenge with that is when you're designing to a storm, are we designing to the 1-year storm or are we designing to the 10-year storm? Because it's not a linear step. It's a much more exponential growth. I mean, between the 10 and 100-year storm, you're in trouble. So I'm happy to chat and take a look at the site. I mean, certainly to help recommend solutions. I mean, and to be fair, pave drain is part of a toolbox of solutions. Like there's not one way to solve the problem, but certainly roads create a big part of the problem. And that's why we are hoping to address it that way.
And I would add to that, your jurisdiction, a product like pave drain would be a very effective product. It's a great product, and we like using it where applicable. The challenge, and he highlighted it in his slides, is getting the initial infrastructure put in is the challenge. And as you work to talk about the longevity and everything else, it does go out, but it's sometimes harder to get that initial payment in whenever you look at other opportunities. But it'd be a great product for University Park, I'll tell you.
And I would think for many communities like ours also.
Yes, I agree.
Quite applicable. I mean, in our situation is just generally in terms of this conversation, because it's wells run, because we're somewhat upstream, we're aware of the fact that we're having an impact downstream. We have, what was that event we had several years ago where we got something
Microphone.
I don't know, huge amount of rain in 2 hours, and we had that, huge flooding situation that did flood just only a couple of houses, but still it was an alert to what could happen.
I think
so. We're interested.
And the thing that I would add to it that their product adds is that you have an aging infrastructure issue.
Yes.
Your storm drain is spread apart. If I were designing University Park today, I'd have much more storm drain. I'd have upstream devices that were going to infiltrate the water into the ground, so you have less runoff in early events. All those things in place, larger pipes, all of that. When you take a product like a pave drain and you start implementing it throughout the area, you start to get back some of that ability without losing the space. You're able to do stuff in the public realm, okay, with a product like pave drain that you can't do in other locations. The challenge in a University Park type application is we don't have the availability to use public dollars and just go and say, okay, we're going to put this device on your private land, right? A pave drain is a dual use. You can drive a car over it and you can have stormwater management underneath. So you're not losing that space. That's why it's such a valuable product, and it's going to be used more and more because the cost effectiveness of the long term is really good. And in fairness to them, they've solved one of the big problems that concrete and asphalt haven't solved is you're not running a vac truck over it every 3 weeks or 3 months, rather, 6 months, whatever you want to do. You're not telling your DPW&T they have to do so much special stuff, right? And that's why I think for a lot of the jurisdictions that are inside the Beltway, it's going to be a great product.
So just a little bit follow-up on this, because of some of the areas that we might apply that or so close to the creek, this raises a question about, isn't there some requirement about 50 feet on each side of the creek, don't touch it, that kind of thing, that's part of the environmental legislation?
There is. By MDE's rules, you're supposed to be a certain amount above the high mean water table, and you're supposed to be set back. That being said, that Colmer Manor site, that's actually in the water table. Like, we can actually see the Anacostia go up and down. Certainly that's not ideal for the water quality benefits, but for the quantity, I mean, the sediment that's going in there was going to go through there, but it's going to have to filter through the ground. So there's a lot of ways to address this, but unfortunately, I feel like the rules have lost their way a little bit, where it is how do I meet the compliance goal, not how do I make the bay better. And I think there's a lot of that. And so in an area like that, you're going to have to kind of weigh it to get what you want. But certainly we've been able to make a very convincing argument in a lot of jurisdictions to do just what you're trying to do.
We have a question from the back of the room, and then I'll get to the question here.
Hi, Sergio. You hear me? Can you hear me?
No, it doesn't sound like it's picking up.
Can you hear me now? No.
Somebody knows this. Oh, here we go. My name is Sergio Obadia, and that neighborhood that Aaron's talking about, it's called Sligo Park Hills. That's my neighborhood. And to your point, that was the first time that Montgomery County's DEP and transportation worked on a project together. They did that because we were due to get road resurfacing. So they actually, DEP went around with transportation. I don't know the details. I don't know if you knew this. They actually went around and they mapped every house and they figured out where they could put stormwater, bioswales, and everything. And they actually offered some incentives to homeowners to do that. Most people took it. I'll say that for my neighborhood, but some people didn't take it. So that's actually maybe a way to use public dollars that were already going to be used to do that. But the thing that I'm not hearing here is about homeowners. I'm hearing a lot about money spent for, Maryland natural resources and road resurfacing, but I'm not hearing about the homeowners' impact on stormwater. If we want to save the bay by capturing the water at the site, 25% of the carbon, I know Aaron doesn't like to just have carbon as a metric, is by homeowners. But a lot of that time isn't being spent on homeowner education. So is there a way to reach, or how do we reach the homeowners for that?
Oh, sorry. And if somebody wants to
come visit,
we'd be happy. Aaron knows how to find me. If anyone wants to tour that.
That's a really great point. If you look at the landmass of any jurisdiction, when there's new development, they call it infill development, and the new stormwater control laws in most jurisdictions apply only to new built or net new tear downs, rebuilds, or net new, and you have to come up to state standards. But what about arguably, let's say 95% of the existing buildings and the existing houses? That's where a lot of the problem comes from. There are ways to address it, and frankly, they're all voluntary to this point. Montgomery County has a stormwater tax. I assume this county does as well. If you put in some of these stormwater control measures like rain gardens or landscaping, conservation landscaping, you can get a rebate on your people call it a rain tax. I can't remember the exact name. You get a rebate on that. And the other thing that I know that Montgomery County does is they will reimburse you for part of the insulation costs. Problem is, what do you do about low-income people that can't afford to do this? I mean, in my humble opinion, the county ought to be going to low-income people and saying, we will install rain gardens, conservation landscaping on your property at no charge. Why would the county want to do that? Because they can take credit for that as part of their MS4 permit in terms of stormwater control. Just one of my ideas. The other way to do it is You can't take an existing homeowner and say, tomorrow, you now have to spend $10,000 or $20,000 to control the stormwater, on your property. No one would do that. But what you could have is a law that says, at the time the property is sold, the stormwater control has to be brought up to new build standards. And then you leave it up to the buyer or the seller to negotiate who's going to pay for it, or they're going to split it. But that's like 90% of the problem is existing properties.
I was just going to add one point to that. I know Easton has different rules than some of the counties in the area. They're not as strict, but I can tell you in a brand new build in Waterside Village, all the neighbors are routing their water onto the street, and they created a massive stormwater problem for the town. And so even under the current rules, the existing rules may not even be sufficient in themselves. So
the other thing I would add too is, we have to protect the stream restoration projects and the other BMPs that go in physically in the ground with easements so that they're not disturbed in the future. If you were a homeowner, would you allow an easement on your property that said you can't touch this rain garden for X number of years or even in perpetuity? That's a big challenge when you get to that point. So, I think there are ways that we can provide those benefits without putting those easements on, but that's a challenge we have right now.
Okay, question.
I do have a question, but I also would like to make sure that our online participants have the opportunity to ask questions.
Please ask your question and we'll look to doing that.
Okay, thank you. My name is Leila Riazi. I live in the town of Cheverly, and we always have a lot going on. So my question is what do you advise for community organizations and legislators to be doing to have more responsible, more ecologically responsible stream restoration efforts? Some of the things that I'd like for you to address would be the inclusion in legislation of a requirement to include upland BMPs as part of completing stormwater restoration projects. The idea of what role does an ecological survey play in how you handle a proposed stream restoration project. We hear a lot about the linear footage of projects. What are other better measures so we get out of the trap of having this winding in order to get the better credits, and doing more that will tie in private property and upland BMPs for credits, and just things that I don't even know to ask. If you were to give this to legislators, to community organizations, what would be the ask that would help improve this process?
just one quick point. I don't know if you know, the state now has pay for performance contracting around stormwater. It is not a mechanism that is widely used, but they do have it. But I'll let you.
And if you could, I know only the brief is about that, so if that could also be addressed, thank you.
Sure. The first point I would make is that the shift is now away from linear footage. So we can't restore X number of linear feet. We're now looking at how many pollutants, tons of nitrogen and phosphorus and sediment that we remove. So that's a clarifying point. I don't want to take into account. I think to your point, though, we need to craft the legislation to incentivize those things. And what we need to be careful, though, is that we don't make stream restoration become so expensive that it's no longer an option for the jurisdictions who have all these other infrastructure problems, that they can get those co-benefits of stream restoration along with the sediment issue as well. So,
And then what I would add to it is two things. One, what you want to make sure of as a community, if you're the town of Cheverly, if you're the town of University Park, is that the removal of trees is an asset to your community, okay? That the fix, what you're getting in the end, it equates to what you want, okay? I think the challenge to any of these projects is to look at the whole project as a gain to the end. Does the solution meet the goal of what you're trying to do? is the 800 trees that are lost in his situation, turning back to what it will be over time, is that worth it? Okay, you need to understand the project as the community that it's going into and make sure that it all comes together. You know, it can be everything from saying, well, we like the project, but we want it to be smaller. We want it to be contained to here because we don't believe that your work down here is as needed today. You want to be involved and you look at it. As far as the upstream challenge, as a community, we talked about it a little bit ago. You need to work to educate everybody in the community about how controlling your stormwater, if you live in a single family lot, is the best thing you can do. That's the bottom line. Everything from a paved drain system to a rain garden to a bioswale is about controlling the water so it gets into the ground and becomes groundwater moving subsurface where it is cool and it can come out to the stream in a very controlled manner is the best thing that can happen, okay? What you have to be careful of is the reality side. And that's where you don't want to lose track of is the stream is going to continue to erode. It's going to continue to downcut. You're going to have, what I think is a challenge here is a lot of the sanitary systems that move sewage from one place to the treatment plant occurs in stream valleys. There's extreme infrastructure of roads that are next to, 1950s construction. They put a stream, okay, I'm calling it a stream, in where they graded in a slope, put it between two roads and said, here it is. If that stream continues to erode and you start to have loss of infrastructure, you have a problem because you can't drive, you can't do that. So it's a balancing act that is not perfect. And you're gonna have to keep on working to do that, to get to your answer.
So let me, if I might follow on to that. If there is infrastructure in the stream valley, like it's being potentially damaged, sewer lines, fiber optic gas lines, bridge abutments, roads and sidewalks, no one is saying we shouldn't go and do a spot repair. That's an infrastructure protection project. You can go in 50 feet, 100 feet, and armor plate that section, which is probably what you're going to have to do. That's not a stream restoration. And I hear this every time, well, we have to do a stream restoration because the road is caving in. Fine, you go in and do a spot repair. But typically a stream restoration is hundreds, if not thousands of feet. So, that's kind of a red herring in my humble opinion. The other thing to say that is kind of a fear, a FUD factor, fear and uncertainty and doubt. To say that, well, the streams are continuing to erode, if we don't do anything, they're going to be eroding, and the trees are going to keep falling in. We're going to, the whole forest is going to fall into the stream. This problem has been going on for 400 years, ever since colonial times, and to say that it's an emergency that needs to be fixed, in a 6-month project is totally ridiculous. To say that it's emergency when it's taken 400 years to create, and to use that as a reason why we can't take a little bit longer and do all the upland stormwater control just doesn't hold water. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. In deference to our online participants.
I was add a little bit to her pay for performance, just so she kind of, because I know they kind of went on their own tangent here, but the pay for performance stuff, they do withhold like 20 some odd % of the contract amount to demonstrate performance. I'm a big fan of sensors and things like that. There's obviously a lot we can do to document nitrogen, phosphorus, DO, all of that in TSS. Like, we have the sensors to do that, and those pay for performance incorporate generally those. The other side of it too, Maryland does in theory, or doesn't by law, have a nutrient credit trading program. But I can tell you from working nationally, the dollars attached to saving a pound of nitrogen or a pound of phosphorus just don't send the market signal that you want it to. Just to give you, we do a fair bit of work up in Wisconsin, so I'm using them as a counterpoint. It's an order of magnitude more money for a pound of nitrogen and a pound of phosphorus than what Maryland pays. And so that is a big deal. Like, you want folks to do the right decisions. People are knowledgeable. I mean, to give you a good example, DC Water, with the Chesapeake Bay, TMDL, there's been a very big crackdown on point source, which is obviously just sewer systems. They have done so much work that the next time somebody tries to reduce their nutrient diet, their approach is going to literally just go to the farmers on the Eastern Shore and say, we are going to pay you to do things right, because it costs us much more to pull out that last little bit, because we've done so much work already. And so ultimately, that's how we're looking, is from a totality of it. That's where the market signals come in and work well. In theory, in practice, we haven't seen that. So, all right. Sorry.
Okay. Janet has agreed to read some questions from our online participants.
Okay, so before I do that, I'd like to invite our representative, Ann Healy, to ask her question. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And I missed some of the discussion, but I am back, and I did hear the discussion about the stormwater management fees. We do not call them a rain tax. That was a politicized thing. It only applies in 10 counties. So the Eastern Shore is not covered by them. But I wanted to address one of the things that was said, and in Prince George's County, and I don't know if it's how operational it is at this moment, when it was first implemented, they put aside money collected from those fees to help subsidize homeowners who wanted to make changes, to plant rain gardens, put in rain barrels, do other things that would help with the individual homeowners. And so that money, it wasn't in the form of a rebate, it was actually a grant that would help them pay for whatever changes they needed to make on their property. And I know that I haven't looked at it recently, but when it was first implemented, it was pretty successful. And I think it's something that can continue to be done. On the other issue, about what's going on with the Eastern Shore. One of the big things that Maryland has done on the Eastern Shore is we subsidize something called cover crops, which allow planting to protect from runoff during the wintertime when the crops are not being raised. And these cover crops actually absorb a lot of the pollutants going into we did a lot in the last few years, and a lot of it was spun politically. We didn't do away with the rain tax. There never was a rain tax. At first we mandated, and now we strongly encourage local governments to adopt stormwater management fees to help meet their requirements from the federal government on these things. And in some places it works better than others, but we do allow a lot of local option and local judgments on those things. I'm very happy to be here and to hear this discussion, because two things: I think we are going to have to revisit the stormwater management law that we have in place, because it is 10 years old or more, and it's out of date. And this whole discussion about stream restoration, we had a bill in this time, and I think we have to understand it before we make any kind of policy changes. So I'm hopeful that this discussion will be available on video somewhere, that I can look at it, the parts that I missed. And I'm going to continue to listen, and I'll be happy to answer any questions right now.
Thank you so much. We've had a whole bunch of questions in the coming in through the chat, and I think it's only fair to try to do at least a few of them. A couple of them have to do with how things run off the permeable pavement. One is what happens when you install your permeable pavement on a slope, and the other is what is your permeable pavement made out of, because what might leach out of it into the water, for instance, is it made out of fly ash like some concrete is?
The first question, it's a dry cast concrete product. It is made with cement, aggregate, and water. There's nothing to leach out of it on that end. On the question about the runoff, from the surface, we've never had an issue where there's water goes over more than 3 blocks and then doesn't fall in. So the runoff is not the challenge. Obviously, there's a volume of water you could throw into the base that would fill it up. At that situation, basically at that point, yeah, you're not taking a lot of volume out of the thing, but you're definitely taking a lot of velocity out of the water, because usually what happens is it flows down and actually the velocity is dropped and then it comes back out the other side. If you have a sloped installation, I will note, while the surface itself may be sloped, the base needs to be level. There is no difference between this and any other permeable pavement or any other infiltration practice. You do want a level base underneath. When you have that slope, what you do is you terrace it underneath and put like weirs or check dams so that the water can kind of pool in each little section. And that's how you do just that. But in terms of water quality and things like that, the difference between asphalt, which are refinery bottoms, and concrete is night and day. And so that is, I would certainly our love affair with asphalt, we certainly should probably rethink that a little bit. But I mean, keep in mind, we put asphalt shingles on every house and we put tar on most roofs. Like if this is the conversation we're going to be having, like we really need to holistically rethink how we're approaching the issue. So.
Great, thank you. Okay, do we have time for another one? Okay, in Prince George's County, in 2021, Prince George's County cleared the riparian buffer of a stream, added concrete swales and additional culverts that led water from uphill directly into the stream. Downstream, the stream was already eroding, and we've seen even more erosion and the deterioration of water quality. While construction was happening, we asked for bioretention instead of piping water directly into the stream, but the county stated that it would be ineffective and would not consider it. Any comments about how we can understand better how to work with the county to and find out what the requirements are so that we can, as citizens who are watching these things happen, know what we should complain about and what we should not?
Well, you can ask me to give my presentation. A big part of it is educating the elected officials and I almost hesitate to say this, the people who work in the various, I'll generically call it the local departments of environmental protection, not knowing the any changes from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Unfortunately, my experience is a big part of the problem is number one, are the local departments of environmental protection. These people a lot of them are engineers. They're not ecologists. They're not environmentalists. And they're they're looking for a civil engineering solution. My feeling is the way to fix this is going to have to be through legislation. I was involved in introducing the bill that the representative was talking about. It didn't come out the way that I had suggested, and there were a lot of problems with it. But it's a start. It educated a lot of legislators in the Environment and Transportation Committee. But this is not going to be a voluntary fix. It's going to have to be a grassroots legislation to put guardrails on doing these really destructive projects.
And what about the whole issue about, there's the Department of the Environment, but that's not the inspections people. Deep in Prince George's County, there's the Department of Permits and Inspections that are supposed to be making sure that the sediment control and all that happens on construction sites. And any other comments from folks who do this kind of work about how the community can be better engaged in being able to report things if they see things that seem like they're amiss? Or, and how do people find out if that's the way it's supposed to be?
So I deal with that every day, so I think I can give you, the first thing is in Prince George's County, you have representatives that are really available to you. I think it's on. Maybe I'll get a little closer. You have representatives that are very much available to you. If you go to the county websites, feel free to reach out to them. The people that work in their office do an amazing job of taking your message, your issue, your complaint, and getting it to the right staff, the right people that help to make it happen. You can talk to some of the university people, University Park people that are in here. The project that he mentioned had a sediment runoff issue. There was a clay in the soil. It was installed and in place, meeting MDE's minimum requirement, which wasn't enough. And they had to go and through their calling their representative, they had staff out there within 2 to 3 days. They met on site. The Prince George's County Soil Conservation Commission was out there right away. They made recommendations, and it was an iterative process. I think it took 3 attempts to start to get it to go. That's an example of what you're asking, which is when you have a problem, in Prince George's County, your representatives carry a lot of weight, and they do a great job of reaching out to their staff and will get things done. Specifically to the question that you asked, I think I don't have any idea of the project, so I don't want to speak to the specific of the project, but there are challenges due to localized flooding that are occurring, and departments are challenged with solving and doing a patchwork approach, right? They have a bridge or an abutment or a culvert that's flooding right there, and they say we can put in a bigger pipe and we can solve, and we can put that Band-Aid on and patch it. And exactly what I heard the comments said, it shifted the problem to downstream. And that's what some of what's been labeled as stream restoration, which isn't really stream restoration. It's employing some of the concepts of stream restoration while trying to deal with floodplain issues and flood problems and get brought in. So to the question is, that's one of the challenges that departments are facing right now. The DPW&T is fixing the small problem and trying to do the patchwork approach, and then it leads to a bigger problem downstream.
Speaking of which, we have the director of the Department of Public Works for the city of Laurel with us this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate that and giving me a moment. I'm going to come from the perspective that we have to deal with, and that is mitigation. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard you guys talk too much about mitigation. Our concern, and when the time comes, we've got to move that water away from your homes, residences, and streets and out of there. Our whole point is to get it into a system fast and get it away. Why? I think developers need to be here more too, because as we build and the population grows, it's a tough subject, complex issue. You are going to have encroachment on forested areas. You are going to have encroachment on waterways as people decide to live in various places in this country. And to prove this to you, look at Florida right now. Every warning we give as a nation to people to stop moving in certain parts of Florida has failed. 100%, maybe 90%. People move there anyway. So I would challenge you all, it makes it very difficult for us if you don't consider the current structure that was built 40s, 50s, 30s on up, that we have to move and mitigate these emergencies. So some of the restoration, or what we call restoration, is fine, but you hit it on the head. We have to solve the immediate issue, and we also are challenged to get that water flowing, get it drained out of that particular jurisdiction, get it in a waterway and out to where we believe we've been trained and taught that it's supposed to be handled, meaning the bay, the oceans, the rivers. That's where we move it to. So my question is, can you all help us in a practical manner address that? And I do like some of the ideas about the concrete over asphalt, but we're dealing with roadways and systems that are mainly asphalt. What is the practical direction we should be going to looking at that? And please take into account that these are taxpayer dollars that we're going to have to deal with, to try to mitigate on a preventive end, and then mitigate once these floods that are happening more frequently happen. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, sorry. On the stream restoration side, some states, Vermont is one in particular, that they've decided we're just going to buy these homes on the floodplain and we're going to take them down and we're going to allow the water to sit out on the floodplains as an acceptable area. That's an interesting approach. We may not have that luxury down here, but it's an idea. We can also focus the stream restoration projects in areas that there aren't development. The project at Bacon Ridge Branch we saw was one where we can really put water out on that floodplain and provide that flood benefit. So, I think that's one idea, but it's going to be very collaborative.
I think you have a tough challenge ahead of you. I mean, it's the reality. In your department, you never get any complaints if the trash is picked up and the water doesn't flow into their basement, right? I mean, nobody knows who you are until that day. They have to look up on the internet because their basement's flooded because the road flooded. And all the discussions that we're having today, that's the person that you're trying to protect. The individual taxpayer that's out there that says, hey, I understand that there's climate change. I understand this, but my basement's flooded. And all I care about is I want it off my lot because my basement flooded. And, that's the reality of where we are today. The things that I would tell you, products like a paved drain where you get a dual use are an expensive infrastructure. You ultimately are in a budget fight with the schools. You're in a budget fight with everything else that's out there, and you have to struggle to win that budget. Anything that you can do to, and I'm going to talk about single family, and I'm going to talk about you have a little bit more dense development too. Anything that you can do to control water on site is to your benefit. That's just the bottom line, best thing that can happen. I saw a study that was done in Australia. They had developed through the use of cisterns and infiltration of water into the earth, and they have different issues than we do because their rain is feast and famine, right? They get these big storms that come in, and then they may go 3 weeks without rain. Anything that we can do to lessen that runoff is going to make everybody's life better. It makes your life better because that old aging system that you have is okay because you've kept more water on site. You've gone back to a woods in good condition type runoff. That's to your benefit. So the thing that I would tell you as the head of DPW&T is try to invest in the programs that control water on site. I did a little study just dealing with what you can do by the simple stuff, the small stuff. It's amazing if you are able to capture that first burst of rain and delay that from going in. It's going to do a lot to help you out at that level. The hurricane that comes through, it's not going to help you there. What it's going to help is that yearly flooding that you're getting now, where it's just that larger storm and they're getting flooded. That's where it's really going to help you out.
Thank you.